Let's rewind to about 4 years ago when I first met my ex, Alex. At first glance, Alex was the perfect man. He had that charismatic charm, the kind of guy who lights up the room with his presence. We fell in love quickly, and before I knew it, we were living together. It felt like one of those whirlwind romances that only happens in movies, the kind where everything is right, and you just know you found the one. Things move fast, and after about 2 years, we started talking about having a family. We were both on the same page, or so I thought. We wanted to build a life together, and I thought we were solid. For over a year, we tried to conceive, and it wasn't easy. Each month was filled with hope, and then heartbreak as we failed to get pregnant. But then it happened, a positive test. I was over the moon, and Alex seemed equally thrilled. For the first couple of months, everything was great. We were shopping for baby clothes, picking out names, and decorating the nursery. I thought this was it. I was finally living the life I had dreamed of. But at around 5 months into the pregnancy, I started noticing a change in Alex. He became distant, cold, and uncommunicative. He was working late more often and was always glued to his phone. My gut told me something was wrong, but I convinced myself it was just the stress of impending fatherhood. How wrong I was. One night, when Alex was supposed to be at work, I decided to surprise him with dinner at his office. When I arrived, his desk was empty, and his coworkers told me he hadn't been in for hours. That's when the sinking feeling in my stomach turned into a full-on panic. I drove home, my heart pounding the entire time. When I got back, I grabbed his laptop, something I'd never felt the need to do before. It only took a few minutes of snooping to uncover the truth. There were messages, dozens of them, between Alex and a woman named Tanya. Tanya wasn't just any woman. She was someone he worked with. Someone who, as I later found out, couldn't have children of her own. They had been having an affair for months, and she was fully aware that I was pregnant with his child. In fact, she was disturbingly invested in my pregnancy, making comments about how excited she was to be a part of his journey. It was sickening. She was talking as if my unborn daughter was her baby. When I confronted Alex, he didn't deny it. Instead, he tried to spin some disgusting tale about how he didn't mean for it to happen, and how he still wanted to be a family with me. He said Tanya was just a distraction, and that we should focus on raising our child together. It was like he was completely detached from the reality of what he had done. I was 8 months pregnant, and he was talking about his affair partner like she was a minor inconvenience in his otherwise perfect life. I kicked him out that night. The months following our breakup were a blur of emotions, heartbreak, anger, and sheer exhaustion from the pregnancy. I tried to focus on the baby, but every time I thought about Alex and Tanya, my blood boiled. Still, I was determined to be civil for the sake of our daughter, Sophie. After Sophie was born, Alex and I agreed on a temporary visitation schedule. Despite everything, I wanted Sophie to know her father. For a few months, it seemed like things were starting to calm down. Alex visited on weekends, and although our co-parenting relationship was strained, it was manageable. But then, one weekend, Alex didn't bring Sophie back. At first, I thought maybe he had lost track of time, so I called him. No answer. Hours passed, then days. Panic set in. I called his family, his friends, anyone who might know where he was. Nothing. He had completely vanished, taking our newborn daughter with him. I was frantic. I filed a police report, contacted my lawyer, and waited in horror as the minutes turned into hours and hours into days. After a week of sheer hell, I finally learned the truth. Alex had taken Sophie and was living with Tanya. They were essentially playing house, with Tanya stepping into the role of Sophie's mother. This woman, who knew full well she was breaking up a family, was now parading my daughter around as her own, pretending that Sophie was the child she could never have. It was like a sick fantasy they had concocted together. I was beside myself with rage and despair. How could he do this to me, to our child? I immediately took legal action. For months, I was in and out of court, battling for custody of my own child. I can't even begin to explain the toll it took on me. Every day felt like an endless nightmare. Every time I thought about Tanya holding Sophie, caring for her, calling herself Mommy, I wanted to scream. It wasn't just that she had stolen my partner. She had stolen my child and was treating her like some prize she had won in a twisted game. Alex, for his part, didn't see what he had done as wrong. He acted like Tanya and he were simply making the best of a bad situation, and that I was the one being unreasonable. It was infuriating. But finally, after months of court battles, the judge ruled in my favor. I was granted full custody of Sophie, and Alex's visitation rights were reduced to supervised visits. I also filed for and was granted a restraining order against both Alex and Tanya after I discovered that Tanya had tried to legally list herself as Sophie's guardian. This woman was so delusional that she actually thought she could take my place in Sophie's life permanently. Getting Sophie back felt like a massive weight was lifted off my shoulders. It was over. I had my daughter, and Alex and Tanya were out of our lives. For about a year, I lived in peace. Sophie and I were thriving, and although Alex had sporadic, supervised visits, they were few and far between. He clearly wasn't interested in being a father anymore, now that Tanya couldn't play house with him. Then, a little over a year after everything had settled, I started hearing whispers about Alex and Tanya's relationship. Apparently, things weren't as perfect as they had pretended. I learned that Alex had recently inherited a sizable sum of money from a distant relative. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to give him and Tanya a very comfortable life. And then, because the universe works in mysterious ways, Tanya betrayed him. It turns out that Tanya had been seeing someone behind Alex's back for months. Not just anyone, though. Alex's best friend. They had been carrying on their own little affair, right under his nose, and as soon as Alex received his inheritance, Tanya and this guy ran off together, taking a large portion of his money with him. Alex was left humiliated, broke, and alone. I hadn't heard from Alex in months. Life was peaceful again, and I was focusing on raising Sophie. Then, one evening, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see Alex standing there. He looked like a wreck. His clothes were rumpled, his hair a mess, and his eyes were bloodshot from what I could only assume was hours of crying. He broke down immediately, sobbing uncontrollably. Through his tears, he told me the whole story. Tanya had left him, his best friend had betrayed him, and they had taken a large chunk of his inheritance money. He had nothing left. No money, no friends, no place to stay. He was a broken man. And then, with all the nerve in the world, he asked if he could stay with me for a while. At that moment, it was like everything I had been through, the betrayal, the stolen baby, the months of court battles, all came rushing back to me. This man, who had destroyed my life, who had tried to take my daughter from me, was now standing on my doorstep begging for help. The audacity was mind-blowing. I couldn't help it. I laughed. I laughed in his face. I laughed because the sheer irony of the situation was too much to handle. Here he was, after all he had done, asking for my help. When I finished laughing, I calmly reminded him that I had a restraining order against him and that he was violating it by being here. He started pleading with me, saying he had nowhere else to go, that he had changed and that he wanted to make things right. But I wasn't having it. I told him to leave or I'd call the police. When he refused to go, I dialed 911. Within minutes, the cops were there, and Alex was escorted away. So now, here I am, Reddit. Some people in my life think I went too far by laughing in his face and calling the police. They say I should have been more compassionate, given the state he was in, that I shouldn't kick a man who is down. Others think he got exactly what he deserved, that karma had come back to bite him, and I was under no obligation to help him after everything he had done. But I'm left wondering, am I the a-hole for laughing at my ex's misfortune and calling the cops when he showed up at my door, begging for help? Or should I have been more understanding, even after everything that's happened? After what he put OP through, laughing is the least OP could have done. He kidnapped OP's daughter and tried to replace OP with some psycho who wanted to live out a weird fantasy. Now karma smacked him in the face, and he wants OP to save him? Nope, not OP's problem. The fact that he had the audacity to show up at OP's door after all that? OP handled it way better than I would have. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. As a mom, I can't even imagine what you went through when he took Sophie. The emotional torture alone is enough to justify everything you did. You fought like hell to get your daughter back, and now he expects you to forget that and help him because he messed up again? Sorry, but people like him don't change. He only came back because his world fell apart. If Tanya hadn't left him, he'd still be living happily in his fantasy world. He's reaping what he sowed. Info. Just curious, did he ever apologize for taking Sophie in the first place? I'm not sure if he ever showed any real remorse for what he did. It sounds like he's only showing up now because his life fell apart, not because he realized what a massive betrayal that was. If there's no apology or accountability on his part for that, then absolutely not the a-hole. Even with an apology, though, you have every right to refuse him. I just wonder if he's even acknowledged the damage he caused before all of this. not the a-hole. And honestly, you should be proud of yourself for how you handled the situation. I would have done the same thing, laughed, slammed the door, and called the cops. He deserved everything that happened to him. You didn't ruin his life. He did. He made his choices, and they led to this. The fact that he thought you'd welcome him back after all the trauma he caused? That's pure delusion. Let him deal with his mess. You're better off without that kind of chaos in your life. My dad and our family liked meat a lot, but my aunt, who shall be called EA here, did not. EA was a vegan, a plant lover, see? Any animal-based product was pure tragedy. At no other point did she make herself clear than on Christmas Eve on the 2005th year. My dad always held a large dinner party, our relatives ranging from bitter to hearty. He always loved meat, whether pork, beef, or jerky, and always took pride in his Christmas turkey. At that time, I was still a small boy, admiring my cousin's new Hot Wheel toys. We were watching Rudolph when all of a sudden, I heard a loud scream that you could curdle one's blood in. We rushed to the kitchen, and there was my dad, yelling at EA, furiously mad. Due to fuzzy memory, the quotes aren't exact, but I fully remember the tone and the tact. My dad shouted, "What's this, balderdash? Why did you put my turkey in the trash?" EA quipped, "I threw animal cruelty away. Why must you do this before Christmas Day?" Dad barked, "I made you a salad, you shrew. Just because you're vegan doesn't mean we must be too." EA just yelled, "You should be ashamed. Don't you know how these turkeys were maimed?" Dad said, "I don't give a darn what you eat. You keep your plants, and I'll keep my meat. If you don't like it, get out of my house." EA grabbed her kids, who were quiet as a mouse. Then she whispered in her huffy stroll, "Don't worry, kids. Meat eaters get coal." I started crying because of the yelling, but my grandma soothed me in her voice, so compelling. We ended up ordering pizza that night. Other than the turkey, things turned out all right. EA still came every Christmas since then, but kept her mouth shut about being vegan. I think she especially became less of a brat when animal control took her vegan cat. She didn't stop us from having our Christmas feast. And he himself, her son, carved the roast beast. I think my favorite part is that even after being told that Santa gives coal to meat eaters, the EA son grew up to like meat. Assuming so, if he's comfortable enough to carve. That's the ultimate sign of defeat for an entitled parent. That and animal control has a way of putting zealous vegans in their place. Loved every second of this, OP. Just as well animal control took her vegan cat. Feeding cats a vegan diet is cruel. They're obligate carnivores. I never understood that part about veganism. They claim to be all about supporting animals, yet seem oblivious to the fact that animals eat other animals. So, a little backstory. I, 16 female, am a straight-A student and have always enjoyed teaching and helping others with schoolwork. When I was about 13, I wanted to make my passion into a paying job and asked my mom if I could tutor kids for money. Long story short, she said I could do it when I was 16. Last year, I turned 16. I started tutoring 2 of my mom's friends' kids. I don't charge much, only $5 per hour per kid. Because I tutored them 2 hours a day, 5 days per week, it worked out to about $100 a week. Not much, but it gave me some extra spending money. I had been tutoring them about 5 weeks when tragedy hit my family. My cousin died. He was middle-aged and had 4 kids, 11 male, 9 male, 7 female, and 1 female. Obviously, it was hard on their mom. However, her mother-in-law, my aunt, had been living with them for a while at that point. She did most of the housework. Before she came to our country, the house would almost always be a pigsty. She cleans and takes care of the kids. Cousin-in-law, cousin's widow, EC, was a housewife. It already reeks of entitlement. She does nothing to help around the house, and basically expects my nice aunt, NA, to be her servant because she gave birth to NA's grandkids. A week after he died, pandemic hit and schools closed. We thought it would be just a little while and paused tutoring for a month. After that, I realized that a quick reopening was not going to happen and started tutoring them via video conference. Here comes the fun part. The conversation happened on the phone between my mom, M, and EC. Greetings and pleasantries. EC. So I was wondering if OP could tutor my kids. Mom. Which of them? She probably can't do all of them. EC. No, don't worry, not all of them. Just the older 3. Mom. She only has 2 students right now, and I'm not sure if she's able to handle 3 more. EC. But we're family. You know their dad just passed, and it's her duty as their aunt to help us in our time of need. Mom. I'm sorry, but your kids can be a bit naughty sometimes. They are much worse than a bit naughty. And I don't think the other kid's mom would appreciate paying $10 an hour for a class shared with 3 other kids. EC. Well, then you can just put my kids at a different time than them. Mom. Wants to say no, but doesn't want to be rude. Okay, I'll talk about it with OP. Just so you know, the tutoring is virtual. How long do you want them to be with her for, and how much are you willing to pay? EC. I don't need much time. Just about 4 hours a day. We're family, and I don't have much money, so I won't be paying anything for it. Also, I'll need her to be with them physically because my kids need extra help. Mom. All right, I'll talk about it with OP. My mother lets me know that she wants me to decline, and I am happy to do so. 4 hours per day of unpaid work with her demon brats, plus risk of virus exposure, is a definite no. My mom tells me to call her and not be too rude. Me. Hi, EC. Mom told me about your request, and I'm afraid I'll have to decline or change the plan a bit. EC. But why? You're their aunt, and their dad just died, and it's your responsibility. Me. I'm sorry, EC, but I'm in high school, and I can't work 6 hours a day, especially since it's unpaid and you want me to be physically there. EC. Well, just remove the other kids, and you'll only have 4 hours of work. And what do you mean it's unpaid? Of course I won't pay you. You're just a high school student, and we're family. And don't worry about being there. Virus is just a hoax created by China and the Democrats. Christ will save the true believers. Me. I can't just remove the other kids, but maybe we could figure something out. 2 hours a day is the max I will work. So maybe I could tutor just one of them. Or we could alternate kids on different days. Also, I can't just do it for free, but I would reduce the price, and keeping it virtual is non-negotiable. I do believe the virus is real and cannot put myself and especially my 70-year-old grandma at risk. EC. Fine. I'll pay you $3 an hour for all 3 kids, 3 hours a day. Me. I can't accept $9 for something I would get $45 for from another person. I understand your situation, but I can't tutor your kids. EC. I'll give you $4 an hour. Pick them up from my house on said day and time. Me. No. I hung up. On the day we agreed to start, she calls me and asks where I am. I tell her that I'm busy. I'm virtually with my students. She says that her kids are waiting for me to pick them up, and I tell her that I never agreed to take her brats. I hang up and silence my phone. A few days later, I am bombarded with calls and texts from relatives saying I'm wrong to agree and then abandon them. I told them what happened, and most are chill now, but some are still upset with me. Do not cave. You owe her nothing. You are not an aunt to those kids. You are second cousins once removed. If they give you any more grief, then you say, then I guess you will be volunteering 4 hours a day to go and tutor them, since they need it so badly. If they say, no, you do it, then you say, why would I do something you aren't willing to do yourself? Even if they don't live close, you can always suggest they tutor them virtually. Anyone who ever wants to volunteer you for something they won't do themselves are not worth your time or respect.